Here we are again in Hawaii, as you can see, with another episode of Chatting with Charlie. And I'm here with the incredible, the bright, the elevated, the illuminated Mr. Sunshine. And I like to introduce the guests slightly at the start, just to almost gives them a preface of how I see them so far. But I've met Mr. Sunshine recently through a network called New Money. And New Money is it's a group of 830 bus so far, men that are all focused on making money online, providing their skills and their value to the earth. And there is a polar scale of how many different people that you will find. And specifically here, I've met someone that's able to speak the language that not everyone understands. And we'll talk about that in this episode. But without me rambling on too much, I will let the gentleman introduce himself. So, Mr. Sunshine, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I'm grateful that you've invited me on to talk. I think this is going to be fantastic. My goal for the both of us here is to really talk about something that we can develop for the future. I see something bright, which is a word that I really enjoy using and use quite a lot for the both of us. So without further ado, let me explain who I am and what I do. I am a mathematician and an entrepreneur, and I also describe myself as a writer and an alchemist. And what I enjoy doing is I enjoy showing people how they can heal. I think it's quite commonly known that people only use about 10% of their brains. And when people say that, they hear it, they digest it, but they don't really understand what that means. And so my goal is to show people how to, what I call, awaken. And through the use of a variety of techniques, the goal here is to integrate the mind, body, and soul in such a way that it allows everyday people like you and me to really harness everything that God has given us to create the lives that they want.
Powerful, man. Powerful. Already, the language resonates with me a lot. I see it and somewhat understand the code, the mind, the body, the spirit, as the trinity of somewhat how we experience reality. This will be deep. This episode will be one of the deepest for sure, because we'll be able to enter into these realms. We'll talk about some surface level, more understanding stuff, but really just going off the back of what you said there, for someone that doesn't even resonate with the language, bro, like when they hear it, they're almost switched off by it. They resist
Sure.
it slightly because something about it brings up, and we're all in the collective thought field of consciousness, so we all think the
Mm-hmm.
same things, which is, that's a bit woo woo, that's a bit
Yes.
strange, that's a bit weird. How would you first introduce it to someone that is a little bit skeptical of even just hearing the language and getting comfortable with that?
Yes. No, I'm so glad that you asked me this. And the simplest solution is the one that I found myself on. I think the simplest way to really bring people along this path is actually through rationalism. And what I mean by that is science is great, science is fantastic, but humans are inherently illogical creatures, and you can only maximize rationality once you realize and accept this. So, what I mean by that is you can utilize science and rational thought, but eventually there's a rock bottom that you hit. For me, that was Gödel's incompleteness theorem. And basically, what that means is it means that no set of knowledge is fully complete. You can make a bunch of assumptions, and those assumptions can only get you so far. You will hit a point where you cannot learn anymore unless you make more assumptions. So, for a lot of people that might be stuck in science mode, and again, I am not anti-science, I love science. I got into the metaphysical as a result of being hardcore science, atheistic, all that kind of stuff. I realized there was something missing here. There was something at the core almost like the soul or a spirit. And so I would really encourage people to think about using science, whether it's chemistry, physics, psychology, all of these fields of learning as a tool to really bridge into something more. Because again, I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but I'm sure we'll talk about it later. The pineal gland is something that's in the brain. It's something biological, psychological, and this is something that connects people to the metaphysical. So for people that are skeptical that might say that what I'm talking about is rather woo-woo, which is a term that gives me a lighthearted chuckle every now and then, I really do encourage people to think about what the search for truth is and what they can get out of learning. People like Elon Musk, the man who's doing things like investigating research into quantum computing and societies on Mars, these kinds of things, these fields hold the key to something greater. Even some of the most core metaphysical truths that I talk about have connections to not quantum field theory, but quantum mechanics and the odd nature of reality as you really dig into the truth and get to the bedrock of science. So for me, the metaphysical is really just an extension of the physical, although I can understand why people might be skeptical of that at first, as I was the same way.
I love how you described it, because everyone that's tapped into the source of the information describes it in their own way. And us as communicators in general, what we're trying to do is convey a message, allow the commune to actually
Mm-hmm.
happen. And in this case, you're leaning on the science that's very much in place. That although in many ways, science is somewhat prohibited for us to explore the depths of the realms of what we could actually talk about, it still is enabled to communicate the patterns that can't be ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I felt that you were describing there was, these things, these kind of occult meanings, these deeper spiritual connections to self, and being able to see that interesting see with the mind. When we talk about I am this, I am that, it's actually an I there, the pineal gland, as
Mm-hmm.
the receiver unit to you actually used it as, you said, the tool to connect to the metaphysical, which is
Mm-hmm.
a really cool way of saying it. So there's elements that are available to understand through science, but of course the science only really scratches the surface. And really
Yep.
it's one of those things, wouldn't you say, bro, that it can't really be described, but it is understood through experiences. So
Yes.
what experiences do you lean upon? Like, do you have a story that comes to your mind that has given you this? Because it's not so much even belief, it's knowing. You just know it to be true. You just feel it. You know it's not debatable. So is there any story or experience that comes to your mind that you can share with us that really helped you trust in this, to put it in a simple way?
Yes. I have always, I use the phrase think outside the box. I have always thought outside the box, but really the way I describe it now is you go through three stages. You have thinking inside the box, you have thinking outside the box, and then you realize that there is no box. And for those that have seen The Matrix, you will realize that this is very much there is no spoon. It's almost exactly the same concept. So I wouldn't say a story per se, but a paradigm shift for so many people. It really is a matter of perspective. I'm currently on this call on my phone. What is a phone? Now, for people that have lived a majority of their lives in the 21st century, technology is normalized. So really it's, oh, yeah, it's just a phone. But really, let's take a moment to digest what this piece of technology is. If you were to go to the dark ages and show a person this piece of technology and you described it to them, they say, what is this? Who are you? What does it do? and why should I use it? I say, okay, it allows you to connect with people all over the world and talk with them. It allows you to utilize near infinite modes of operation through a piece of technology that to change the way that it works. So it's almost like a shape-shifting device. And it, excuse me, it allows you to take images in time and capture them. Now, to us, these are three normal things. This is the telephone. This is calling people, the telephone, apps, and taking photos. These are things that we all take for granted. But when you describe it like this, I guarantee you that if you were to talk to someone from the Dark Ages, they would run away from you because they think that you are practicing magic, because that's bizarre. So what I encourage people to think about is all the things that we take for granted as modern science, people would have considered magic. So my argument here is understanding this, the paradigm shift is that things that many people would consider magic or metaphysical is really just, in my opinion, science that we haven't invested any societal resources into.
One thing that always stands out for me is almost the spectrum of light, right? Being somewhat, I might misquote it, but it's 0.0034% of all reality that we see. So if we're not even breaking into 1% of reality that exists, and the rest is somewhat called, even when we look at the spectrum of infrared, of gamma, and those waves that we can't see in Wi-Fi's and stuff like, there's stuff even beyond that, which is the most part of what makes up our reality. That, at the very least, sparks an amazing amount of curiosity for me of what is this so-called, there's many ways of describing it, and of course this splits across many subjects that I can exchange with you, and I'm sure that you're familiar with, which is, like dark matter that's just
Sure.
there's just random things, just nothing. What they also call junk DNA. That is like, oh, this rest of this DNA code that's irrelevant, it's just junk. It's like, hang on a minute, what's in that code? All this stuff that we're not. Just imagine being in a house, bro, and like there's 50 rooms, and we're only exploring one or two of them, and we're trusting someone's word to go, nah, there's nothing in these other rooms. Don't worry about them. They're just random rooms. Human curiosity, especially as a child, I relate to this strongly. Asking my mum questions of, what's life about? What are we here on this world for? Why are we using money? What's this? Who controls the money? Where does money come from? All these questions are naturally inside us all the time. But of course, we go through conditioning. This starts to change. We start to judge it as woo-woo, which is interesting because woo-woo sounds actually a good term. When we use that, whoop whoop, when we do that, it's a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing. And
no, not at all.
For someone that's able to actually sit here and resonate with it a little bit and feel it inside themselves, because it is a vibration, when they feel the vibe of it and they're like, okay, this is at least interesting to me. What direction? This is a very interesting question actually for me, because how everyone answers this speaks volumes. But what direction would you point someone in for them to start to understand this?
Okay, so before I fully answer that question, I want to point out that fundamentally everyone understands how the universe works because it's encoded in people's language use, that people will naturally say things, oh, we're on the same wavelength, we're on the same frequency, we vibe together. People fundamentally understand the nature of reality, and that is energy, but they don't even know that they understand. It's locked up in their subconscious as a result of societal programming. So my best piece of advice to everyone, and I will not take credit for this because this is something that ancient texts have always said. That's something that you'll see time and time again with me, is that I don't proclaim to know things that I don't know. I don't take credit for things that aren't mine, which I think actually makes a good point, is that everything else that you see, all the content that I put out, that I put my name on, is mine. So if I'm using someone else's words, I'm always citing it. The advice that I have is look inward. You already know who you are. The something I was thinking about the other day is that this idea of everyone converges to the person that they are. I don't think people change. I really don't. There's a quote, I can't remember who, but it's only the wise and the foolish are unable to change. And I'm loosely paraphrasing there. That's not going to be exact. And I say this because people get the results that they want out of life through their thoughts and beliefs, their habits and actions, and the systems they create that they default to whenever they end up in flow states. So if you see someone in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, take a look at everything they have going for them in their life. Take a look at their family situation. Take a look at their job. Take a look at their social status, their skills, the hobbies they engage in. Everything is connected. This is who they are at their core. And they've gotten to this point in life, in the universe, in the plane of consciousness that you mentioned earlier, as a result of the person that they are. And I think that the soul is really the glue that holds it together. There's a theory, and this is probably the one thing I don't fully agree with in, and I say this loosely because I haven't studied as much as I should up until this point. Buddhism, that there is no soul. I don't quite agree with that. I think that the soul is the glue that holds all possible versions of you together. So whatever you allow that to change into, that's who you are at your core. So for example, how can I word this? You see people like corrupt politicians, and you think about the lies they put on TV, and you look at their lives behind the camera. That's who they are. The actions that they've taken to get through that career path, it defines part of who they are. So if you want to know who you are, look inward, because no one's in your head. No one knows truly who you are but you, and only you can find that out for yourself. There's no book that you can read. You can't Google it. You can't take a class on it. The cool thing about this is that you already know.
I agree. Knowing, gnosis, right? Like
Mhm.
even going back to what they were termed as Gnostics, and at least my understanding of that now, which is actually spelt with a G for
Mhm.
anyone that's looking to research it, which is Gnostic, Gnostic, and they would often sit in stillness. There would be certain members of the tribe or community that would sit in stillness all the time. And by not moving, by being still, and I'm meaning refraining from itches, refraining from, wanting to just twitch your head or move or let your fingers twitch. What you do is you manage to preserve all your energy from being jittered around by the mind. And it actually just goes, obviously, there's more to it than this, but goes to the non physical after a while. And you open yourself up to receive what we just
Mhm.
call downloads in many ways, right? We get downloads of like, moments. Even as we say, the etymology of that word opens up the chamber for the download to come in. Then there's installation. Takes a little while for that to install, but that aha moment is something that we can all relate to somewhere. And often, even if you never sat in stillness, it comes when you're not so much thinking. When you're in the shower, or when you're on the toilet, or you're going for a walk, when you're occupying one side of your brain with something that doesn't really require thought, all of a sudden downloads come to you. What can you describe to us? Like, what's actually going on in a process there where all of a sudden we're getting clarity?
I think one of the fundamental misunderstandings that people have, I'm so glad you asked me this question because I'm going to plug people with a book that I really, really enjoyed. One of the fundamental misunderstandings that people have about the brain is that it generates your perception of reality. Nope, that's incorrect. What it actually does is it filters out information. Your brain is like a funnel. And for everything coming through that consciousness, usually people perceive things through the normal five senses of reality. We're not going to talk about extra perceptive senses. Your brain, again, going back to you talked about, we only see a little bit of light. the infrared rays and the gamma rays, it's all passing through us. We're just not registering it. Your brain is filtering that out. Your brain filters all of that out. So Aldous Huxley talks about this in The Doors of Perception in Heaven and Hell, is that when you sit down and you get into a meditative state, what you're doing is that you're not expelling that external energy through twitching, through movements, through breathing, through drifting, as Napoleon Hill talks about in Outwitting the Devil. You contain all that energy and it has to go somewhere. Energy cannot be destroyed or created, it simply gets transmuted. I believe that it goes right to the brain because that's where the funnel happens. That's where energy gets transferred, I suppose is the best word I can use. So this is why people that have mastered meditation end up having psychedelic experiences, is because you need all that universal energy to go somewhere and it goes to the brain. So that would be, I think, why people should sit down and do nothing, don't think about anything, don't even think about not thinking, simply add awareness, because what you're doing with developing awareness is you're slowly uninstalling. I think you called them programs. I like to call them drivers because I like the analogy. Again, connect with people through what they already know to get them to what they don't know. The Feynman technique is about simplifying things. Like, how would you explain this to a 5-year-old? People know computers. It's like drivers. It's like making aftermarket versions of your car. You've got pieces of technology that are holding your car or your computer back. So uninstall those drivers. When you sit down and you develop awareness, you're taking out old drivers that hinder your ability and your brain's ability to really process information. So you start to filter out less and less and less. I think in the Tibetan Book of the Dead that they describe this as the light eternal or something like that. That's not an exact quote, but the more you can get to perceive the entirety of reality, which is what a majority of people never get to experience, the more you will be able to understand energy and how the universe works. And it's really just as simple as sitting down with your legs crossed and breathing. You can start with 2 minutes, you can start with 5. What I've noticed is that a lot of people don't even realize how on autopilot and how much they drift and how I use this word loosely and not in a pejorative term, unconscious they are. Because again, I was once this way. You have to develop this like a skill. You sit down, you're not doing anything, you're not thinking about work, you're not thinking about relaxing, you're not thinking about food, water, shelter, none of that. You sit down and you're just breathing. And people don't realize how often these thoughts come and they go, these emotions and thoughts they experience. And it freaks them out a little bit because they're starting to realize they develop that aware mind, not thinking mind, the subconscious mind, and they realize how active their brain is. And it freaks them out a little bit. They think, oh my God, how many thoughts am I having? Why am I thinking this much? It's completely normal because you're not used to watching the filter. You're not used to watching that process of energy processing energy. And so to develop that skill is, I would say, the first principle of becoming awakened by far.
And that skill, if I had to sum it up in one word, what you're describing is awareness, truly, right?
Yep.
It's almost like, and I'll give you some examples of what I experienced when I was really young, which other people might be able to relate to and go, oh shit, I feel that. I feel that. And for me, this is what I experienced. So I was 3 years old. I was running up and down this patio. Had all these grown-ups around me, all this kind of stuff. I remember where it is. Like, I remember it so vividly. But what happened was, I was like running up and down. All of a sudden, I stopped in my track. And the thought that came to my mind was, I am 3 years old. I became self-aware that, oh, I'm this 3-year-old. But it was supported by, because I was only 3, like my body was free, and my information and knowledge on what was really going on around me wasn't great. I was 3 years old, but it was coming from lifetimes somewhere else of like, oh, I'm here now. I am here. I'm a 3-year-old. Like my awareness was the thing that I was connecting to there. Like, oh, I'm awareness. I'm a 3-year-old. I am not just a 3-year-old. I'm living the experience of this 3-year-old called Charlie. And this is what my life looks like right now.
Yep.
And in that moment, what I experienced, bro, was this situation where I was like, this is going to be super relevant for the rest of my life. And I don't know why. But from that point, I've had this hyper sense of awareness. And what it felt like to me was my life was like the Truman Show, where I was being watched everywhere I went. And I felt there was cameras on me. I felt people were watching me. And I felt that everyone around me wasn't actually real. And it was only about me. And how I translate that now is just a very, very high sense of awareness about myself. And then, of course, as I grew older and I got the actual experience here on this realm and everything that's happened predominantly in the last 4 years, I would say, I realized, oh, fuck. I remembered actually. I remembered why I was here. I remembered fully what I'm supposed to be doing. I realized what I had experienced and I got full context of what everyone else is also doing and how they're operating. So that was what awareness felt like to me. Do you have any experiences that you can relate to where you've felt similar?
Kind of. Not exactly as how you describe it. I've always been very aware of me, whatever me means. We could talk about self and what that is. For those that haven't seen it, you need to watch Fight Club. Fantastic movie about self and what self is, but that's besides the point. You're touching on something that is so important. And again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is that everyone converges to who they are, and that is defined by the soul. And that to me is spiritual immortality. I don't think that people, Socrates talks about this too uh, or rather, Plato talks about this in his stories with Socrates, and that's people don't learn things; they simply recall. Really, what this is you're peeling back layers like an onion. So over the course of your lifetime, you're really not learning anything. You're really recalling things that you already know. You're becoming the person that you already are. So for me, I've always had vivid dreams, really bizarre. Some of them nightmares, but most of them good. Um, and it comes in terms of uh, allegories. So for me, the most vivid thing was as a kid, I always had dreams of my teeth falling out, and that's classic of that and being outside without clothes on. And those are indicative of forgetting something. I'm forgetting something. What am I forgetting? I need to remember. I need to become aware. And as I've become more aware, those dreams have gone away. So really, what I think that really means is it's just pieces to the puzzle. It's my subconscious of the current corporeal form that I'm taking in, and I'm sure you can relate to that statement. As I'm sure you've thought about reincarnation before, which again is just an energy conservation statement. The soul is immortal. This physical form will die, but the energy will take place somewhere else. Again, going back to get people through science, energy conservation. Who's going to disagree with that, right? Is that these dreams are meant to guide people. It's telling you something that you need to solve. It's here is an issue with how you're currently living, solve it, and then you can improve, and then you can continue this process. It's that cycle of, again, going back to mythological literature, the number three and life, death, and rebirth. You see it over and over. And the first step to doing that is, again, through awareness and realizing that the person you are 5 minutes ago is gone. Are you who you were 7 years ago? Okay, shorten that timeline. Are you who you were 1 year ago? No. Okay. Well, are you who you were a month ago? A week ago? Yesterday? 5 minutes? Just 2 seconds ago? So really, you can come to the conclusion that there is only the present moment, and I'm happy to share it with everyone here on Earth. It's a blessing. I do believe that.
Mm. Damn right, man. If you aren't present, then you aren't
Cheers.
receiving the gift. Cheers to you, brother. Yeah, that is an amazing way of of reducing it down to ultimately what the only thing that matters is. And staying on this topic for a moment longer, because there's something more to extract here.
Sure.
This is very, it's very accessible, this knowledge, because it's inside us. So it goes everywhere. But we are gonna benefit from one thing. I haven't even read it, but I've got the Kabbalion lying around here somewhere. And the Kabbalion is the 7 philosophical principles from the Hermetic philosophy. And what I realized as I just scanned through the categories was realizations over my life that I'd start to come to. They're worded in different ways. They're definitely coded and worded in different ways, but these formulas. And what it started to make me think, bro, was I don't have any of my own thoughts. I have the ability to receive them. I have the ability to channel the information, but I don't actually own any of it. And I'm getting to a point now. This brings it to an interesting place because it opens up the question whether anyone's thoughts and ideas are truly their own, or whether it's kind of like there's like a galaxy. A galaxy is a good way for me to think of what I think of as the collective field. And it is actually a great analogy because it's like a fractal in a way. But
Mhm.
a galaxy is like this infinite, perpetuated space of, call them ideas. And ideas, even in etymology, could be mind's eye, C, vision, D being dimension somewhere, E being energy, and A being atmosphere. Like somewhere in that term, we can just reach these ideas and certain people channel through the information. Do you resonate with that? Do you feel like that you've got your own free thoughts? Or do you think you're just a vessel right now for what's collectively available for all of us, but not, keyword, not everyone has the ability to access it right now? Some of us are gifted. What's your thoughts on that?
I I've been complimented before on my mind's eye, but I really don't. Sometimes I don't even feel comfortable taking those compliments. If I'm being entirely honest, I'm flattered, and I think my face might be getting a little bit red. But honestly, I'm so glad. Clearly, we're on the same frequency today. That you mentioned that because one of my favorite Carl Jung quotes is, "People don't have opinions. Opinions have people."
Beautiful.
And the same thing goes with actions. I can see it on your face. You love that quote because it's a fantastic quote. And you can see this with the woke virus that's going on. We could talk about hours, days for that, but let's let's not. I'd rather keep the energy positive today. Um, and you see this with people's actions too. Again, going back to awareness, when you have an environmental stimuli that stresses you negatively, um, or positively. And what I mean by that is removing or adding something, not in terms of happy or sad or happy, not that kind of negative positive. Going back to psychology, you do something, you say something, and if you're aware enough to look at your own actions and look inward, you say, "Oh my God, that doesn't even sound like me. That doesn't sound like self. Why did I do that? Why did I say that?" And you realize that a majority of your opinions are not your own. And again, if you haven't read Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, he talks about this as well, is that one of the best ways that the devil gets people to drift and walk into unconsciousness is by having, like, one of the hallmarks of someone that the devil has by their nails is someone that who has a lot of opinions, but they either mean nothing, they don't know where they came from, or they can't justify it. Because opinions have people. It's not the other way around. And I think this actually, you can tell a lot about a society's health by its political system, and you can see this now today in America, where it's just back and forth, and people don't even know why they believe in the team that they've chosen, even though the teams mean nothing, and they'll go about with these talking points, and they'll say that they believe one thing, and they'll follow this dogma, this rhetoric, but they don't know why. So I encourage everyone to, and this is one of the benefits of becoming awakened, is that you need to think critically. I don't like the postmodernists and the Marxists who only want to deconstruct things, because what they want is they want to destroy society. And I don't like using this word. I use it very sparingly because I'm a very positive person. But I hate people like that, because why? It's the opposite of the abundance mindset. You should want to grow and create things. But to, again, going back to life, death, and rebirth, to create this new version of yourself, to be the person you need to become to get to where you want to go, you need to deconstruct through critical thinking all the old beliefs you told yourself were yours, analyze them, and then reconstruct it. So I encourage everyone that's watching this dearly to really think critically about why you believe what you believe, why you think you believe what you believe, and really ask yourself if it's useful, if it's positive, if it's constructive, if it's really benefiting you. And I think that we could talk about limiting beliefs and things like that, but the general idea here is, and I talk about this in my ebook, The 9 Fundamental Components of Self-Optimization, reverse the flow. It's really simple. If what you're doing isn't working, don't do it anymore. It's that simple. If it's not serving you, if it's not serving your family, if it's not serving your community, stop doing it. Um, Simply put, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Don't do that.
Mm. To extend on one of the things you said there, use the word devil.
Okay.
Devil conjures up. So think about words, spells, cast, visions come in, mind's eye. You're probably seeing what I'm seeing and what everyone else is seeing when we think of devil, right? I mean, it's perpetuated everywhere right now. There's music videos where there's all this devil worship going on.
Mm-hmm.
How can we break it down in a way to actually remove its elusiveness and actually just understand the simplicity of what that form of energy is? How would you describe it to someone for them to remove the idea of the trivial sense? Is this pitchfork, horns, red, fire, hell? How do we like actually get people to understand what the vibration, or at least the manifestation of that quote devil is?
There's a lot to unpack in that. And to really simplify what the devil represents, I think it, in one word, give me a few moments. I want to give you the best answer that I can think of.
That was a deep one. That was a sheer
Yeah,
axe wound of a question.
no, it's, as an aside, people think that the key to learning is answers. No, no. You need to ask the questions. The questions that give you the best nuggets of wisdom are the ones that people don't answer for years, decades. I mean, Albert Einstein spent 10 to 15 years broke as shit studying his question of what happens if I'm like on a rocket next to a beam of light. And then he made general and special relativity, not in that order, special and then general relativity. So really it's the questions that people need to pay attention to. Now, back to your original question of what does the devil represent? I think destruction, and not just the noun of something that describes rubble and waste, but the verb as well, to deconstruct. And again, I think I mentioned that everything is one earlier today. Yes. This is why you need to avoid people like Marxists and postmodernists, because they're all talking about destruct, destruct, destruct. They've got low frequency energy vibrations. For people that are narcissists, they consume things, they destroy, they leave destruction in their wake. And what that does is it pulls you deeper and deeper into your first 3 chakras, and it disallows people to really follow that higher purpose. because they're stuck in this notion of destroy. To me, what that means is, and again, everything is one, it's the opposite of the abundance mindset. If you think about the yin yang energy is the divine masculine. It's fiery, it's growth, it's burning bright. The devil, he represents shrinking, um, caging yourself unnecessarily, and becoming less than what you are. It's the opposite of everything that should be good.
Man, let me say this first. Great delivery in response to that question, because that is not
Thank
an
you.
easy question. And I really admire you for seeking a well-formed answer, for one, making it clear also what you was going through in your mental processing. And you gave me a nugget there that was, oh yeah, devil, deconstruct,
Yep.
like that linkage and how that manifests. Because ultimately, one thing I took from Santos Panacci, which fucking phenomenal syncretist who links up all religions, all languages, all music, and kind of gives you the code of how reality is manifesting. But one of the things I took from him was that heaven and hell, perceived as places, are places, but the condition and the state is first. So if you're vibrating low, it's interesting you also said about the lower chakras, and the lower chakras also being red, hell being associated with red, that there's this there's this state that you have first, this vibration first. Your life can be hell. Oh, my life is hell right now. My life is hell. Our work is hell right now. So your
Mm-hmm.
hell actually becomes wherever you are. If you're living in depression and your life is, quote, hell, and I use these words trivially, how other people describe it, but your hell becomes your living room, your car journey, your bus journey, wherever you are, you carry hell with you. However, can also reach heaven in the state of heaven by many things that will elevate your vibration and frequency, live a good life. And heaven becomes anywhere that you go because within
Mm-hmm.
yourself, you have a relationship that is untouchable. There's a quote, there's a quote from, I don't know his name in the film, but when Mel Gibson's in Braveheart, and of course he's like lying on that fucking, that like axe bed or whatever. I need to watch that again, but he's saying, you can essentially take this, you can take that, you can take our woman, you can take our blah, 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 but you cannot take our freedom. And
Yes.
what he's referring to is true freedom, because ultimately he's on a table, right? And he's about to get massacred. But
Mm-hmm.
his freedom isn't in his physical limitations. His freedom, similar here, and if you can relate to this, bro, like Manson, like levels shit, where he's in prison. Whatever that guy was doing, I don't know all the ins and outs, but one thing I took from him is that some of his channeling and speeches and the prison's in your mind. I'm free, baby. I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder to how, and I think about this because I've gone into some of the most tightest situations, quite literally, where I've gone like caving or I've gone through tight holes. And if I let my mind run wild, I get panicky, claustrophobic, all that kind of stuff. But when I connect to my awareness and I go, I'm not my body anyway. All I am is my awareness. And my awareness is untouched, unscathed everywhere I go. If I'm in a tight
Mm-hmm.
gap or an open field, and if I can relate to that in myself anywhere I go, then I can always control my state somewhat to the
Mm-hmm.
best of my ability. And I'm kind of just riffing off the back of what you said because it was so powerful, but it did help me understand more how it manifests and how we're always creating the reality around us by what state and condition we're in. So, for someone that's for someone that's living in a situation that they want to change or they're not happy with, what's the first what's the first practical step you would advise them to take?
Charlie, I gotta hand it to you. You are fantastic at transitioning and weaving conversations. You're really good at this. Thank you
Thanks,
for
man.
that fantastic segue. One word, truth. If you're not honest with yourself, you can't be honest with anyone else. I see so many people that lie to themselves about their situation, who they are, what they're capable of. And this goes both ways because I see a lot of people that are winners on the inside, internal winners, but they think that they're losers because other people have told them that they're not worth it, that they're stupid, that they're ugly, useless, whatever. They've got other people's programming and projected self image onto themselves. But it also, you have a lot of people that say, oh, well, I'm just a few pounds overweight. I can do this, that, the other thing. But their habits, again, everyone converges to who they are. Their habits and actions say otherwise. So I really like Wes Watson, and you'll see where I'm going with this in the future, is because Wes Watson, really big inspiration for me. Man went to prison for, I can't remember the exact year, but at least 5 years, at least 5 years. And similar to Charles Manson, although Charles Manson is not a good person, Wes Watson and him are not the same. But the one key component that they had in common is that they were stuck in prison, but their minds were free. And so, to anyone who wants to fix their situation, again, Wes Watson, or no, it was 5 years after prison. 5 years out of getting out of prison, he is now a multimillionaire. So if you can see anyone that's gone from a very not good situation to a very good situation, it proves that anyone can make their life what they want it to be if you believe and take action by using universal laws. So you need to be honest with yourself. Now, I really liked, again, going back to Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley, and God, that was such a good response from you. Talking about heaven and hell as places on earth. Dr. Jordan Peterson used this term, he said psychogeography, and it really stuck with me because your psychological landscape, that's essentially what that term means, is connected to your frequency and vibration. Going to another quote that Wes Watson has, your frequency is what you frequently see. If you think, as you said, oh, my life is hell, my work is hell, I'm having all of these bad things, life is bad, that's because you're in a bad spot. Your mind and the radio signals that you're getting from the universe is telling you you're not in a good place. You might be a bad person right now. You might be doing bad things. You might be hurting people. You might be dishonest, unjust, unpure, in a bad place. All of that can be changed by rewiring your programming. And to me, going back to the notion of destruction and the devil, you need to learn how to unlearn so you can learn what's good. The matrix of societal programming keeps people in their lower chakras for the explicit reason of if you're so busy working 60 to 80 hours a week that you can't even think about freedom because you're so worried about getting the next piece of bread, getting food, that you can't even think about growing into a bigger person, that's the trap. That's the cage that people are stuck in. So I find it ironic that someone can be stuck in prison but be free, and someone else can be free but stuck in prison in their mind. So realistically, everyone who wants to change their life needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror through your mind's eye and ask yourself, who are you right now and who do you want to be? Because no one's going to give you that hard truth but you.
There's fireworks going off in my head right now. I really appreciate how you answered it. Simple. It really is simple, and simple always wins. But truth, honesty, and just to add to that, for someone that's receiving that message, feeling. Feeling is more powerful than thought. So you've got to understand what's leading to your feelings. Sometimes your thoughts lead to your feelings. You need to be aware of that. But ultimately, you'll know if something feels right, true, and honest
Mhm.
because it will feel better. You know, if you give yourself two
Yes.
options and you're like, trying to think of a trivial example, but what I always say to people is imagine leaving, well, choose an option, A or B. And if you choose the option and you think, oh, I should have gone with the other one, then you know you should go with the other one. But if you choose the other one, you're like, oh, I'm okay with this one. Most likely going to be the one that feels right to you. And interesting when we say right, also, we're referring to all the right side of the brain, all this kind of intuitive level of information,
Hmm.
this sensory rather than logical, rational, overthinking from the left side. We know to do what's right. We are righteous and rightful. And that in itself is a language. It's like an instrument that we play. And if you're anything like me, you can just kind of pick up instruments or sounds and you'll know you don't need to read sheets. You can hear that sounds like terrible, and you like hit a chord and you're like, oh, there's something there. That is possible to learn and transfer into your own body. So when you feel something about a decision, a room you've walked in, the more that you can be guided by that and you follow that, you'll always be more honest with yourself. And you'll know, everyone can relate to this, you'll know if you're not being honest with yourself because you'll feel like shit everywhere you go. You won't
Hmm.
be happy at your job, you won't be happy in your relationships. You'll feel like, oh, like I don't want to be here, basically. And the more confidence you have to trust your gut, and the more that you express your ability to, this is where you get really experienced. You don't get into situations at all. You're just like, no, thank you, not for me. And you get really good at no's, and you get really good at shutting down things before they even begin.
Yep.
That's when you can really start to pick up momentum. And leading into momentum, I think this is a good segue into, like, first of all, this has been a fire chunk of depth of what we're speaking about, bro. And I think this conversation is important to just go out into the ether. Just by having this conversation, we're elevating the vibration of what is just everywhere in music, in YouTube videos, and all this kind of stuff. We need everything. We need the raising
Mm.
of the vibration everywhere. And this depth might not be for everyone. Everyone comes to it at their own time, but it is in everyone and you can't avoid it. And if you don't get it in this life, you'll be shown again next life. And eventually you'll have to surrender to whatever it is that's the ultimate. And ultimately it comes down
Mm.
to yourself for me. It comes down to yourself. But segueing onto this, all these skills, all these understandings, and all these depths now come out of the water. Now we're not in the submarine anymore. Now we're in a speedboat, or call it a yacht on the top. How is
Okay.
any of that stuff relevant to succeeding? How does it transfer to succeeding? Let's get specific here, especially how we've met each other in this network. How does that
Okay.
make me money? How does that make me money and get me to succeed and move to where I want to go by knowing that stuff? What's the point?
I've caught some flack on money Twitter for people that don't understand. Again, these are the people that will see what we're talking about and call it woo woo. I am never, you are never, you will catch me dead if someone proclaiming to be me says that meditation and journaling and things like that will make you rich. It's not me. They're lying. This stuff is not going to make you rich, not explicitly. You can't just sit in a room, and this is why manifestation and visualization it catches a lot of flack, because you'll see some people that don't know what they're doing. They think they can just sit in a room and manifest being rich. No, that's not how it works. What it is, it's looking into your mind's eye and looking into yourself and seeing who you want to be, and then taking action to build the life that you want. Because God and the universe frown on laziness and wanting something for nothing. Nothing is free. What meditation, journaling, and the ideas that I show people, what it can do is it allows you to build yourself into the person that will get to where you want to be. So if one of those things is you want to be rich, fine. That's cool. I know a couple of people I've been talking to, they don't care about material possessions. They want a ranch out in the middle of nowhere and they don't care about being rich. That's the life they want to build. But I know some people that want a yacht, they want a speedboat, they want all these things, and they really like material things. And that's what they want to build. That's fine. The key here is looking inward and developing thoughts and beliefs, habits and actions, and systems that you can iterate on to build the person you need to be, get to be, in order to go where you want to go. It starts with self. So, going back to uh, new money and how we met, it really is something special to be able to meet people like you and like a couple of the other fellows that I've met who I'm very grateful for, that you see people who want to become successful. And really what it comes down to is it's a tool. It's, how can I put this best? For people that want to become successful, you need to grow the successful version of you and kill off the loser version of you. Everyone has that pair of voices in their head. You have the bitch and you have the winner. You need to not listen to that bitch, that loser, and you need to listen to the winner. So being around people who are constantly exuding winner energy, winner mindsets, winner systems, you can then teach yourself how to learn that and unlearn behaviors of I'm not good enough, I'm not capable of this, I can't do that. So really it's all about um, cleansing yourself of negative energies, bad ideas, bad thoughts, bad beliefs, and entering that life, death, rebirth cycle.
Right now, what we're going to do, bro, is we're going to flow like Super Saiyan mode, and we are going to spit this fire out there so it's seen in one place, which I think is very rare. And if we can capture it in this episode, people will get more of an open mind and an insight as to why you need both. And for me, I can speak both languages. So the language, language A, money language, let's call it money language,
Okay.
is get your fucking work done, show up, keep working hard, stop being a bitch, stop overthinking everything. Make sure that you're working to your absolute limit. Find where you can surpass your limits. Stop procrastinating by overthinking about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and put the action in consistently over a long period of time to get where the fuck you want to go, and don't make
Yep.
it complicated. So I resonate with that because I understand that's the formula. However, language B, language of the universe. To
Mm-hmm.
get there, you have to understand what action it requires, and you can communicate the action in uh reach out, do DMs, right? Or you need to keep showing up to your work, keep showing up to the gym, get on the phone, start to make sales. You can translate it to the specific pieces of content that are going to actually get you that money. But underneath it all, if you're self-aware enough, you'll realize that there's codes and patterns. And you put it greatly as the things that drive your action and behavior are your thoughts and beliefs. And if you're not
Mm-hmm.
understanding fully who you are, and you don't see that you're not your thoughts, then you can you can fulfill the criteria to earn money, sure. But if you miss the language of the universe, which is energy out, energy in, it's transfer. Money is energy, so it's money in, money out. You have to spend money to make money, and all this kind of stuff actually just relates back to the simple universal languages of how everything and anything works, including ourselves, because we are just the same as everything else, manifesting in a different form. So understanding all this language is very beneficial to earning more money, and more money than anyone else in the long run. If you're really asking me personally, you can only get so far until you will hit a spiritual plateau, and you won't be able to make any more money past that point because you haven't elevated your spiritual self. So if you're missing in the fundamentals, you also get to this point. That material that fulfills you full of dopamine and makes you feel good and you flex, that's all going to run out fast. You'll dry up, and you'll start to realize that as life changes and you're not really changing, you're just kind of doing the same thing at a higher rate, you'll feel unfulfilled in some way, because it's not about metrics of what's in your bank account. Of course, that's a great measurement to kind of measure growth, but in yourself, if you're not able to add more value, become more self-aware, understand more how it works, then you're missing out on the gaps to optimize the system of making money. If you really care about being a billionaire and even moving into trillionaires, which I'm about both, if you ask me, bro, I'm going to be, I say it in this kind of funny way, which is like, I'm going to be spiritual as fuck because I am a spirit and I'm driven by it. That's why I won't ever be stopped. I'm unstoppable and I can't die. However, I'm living in a third dimensional realm that is material, and I will capitalize and conquer the material in this realm by understanding who the fuck I am at my core, because everything comes down to fear and love. And if you are driven by fear, then everything in your life is going to manifest at a certain level if you're driven by fear. I am fearless. Of course, there's certain things that make me scared, but really, I won't let fear govern me. I don't have fear. I understand fear is an experience and I move through it. So, on the deeper levels of all the internal codes and workings, this is a good example. Do you not think it would be better to get a supercar? You want to drive it around a track and you want to be really fast. And you can just be rich enough to get a supercar, drive around a track and get a really good time. If you want to increase that time, don't you think it makes sense to learn more about how the car works and learn more about the weight of the car, learn more if there's anything you can change in the car to do the exact same race, the exact same route, but cut off those milliseconds to do a better job, right? There's a good film called Rush where this guy comes in and does that. And he's like, we have to change the screws. We have to do lighter screws. We need to use lighter body weight. These little nuances, especially when you get into the realm of really, really making money, these little nuances are going to give you that competitive edge. And it's about competition. There's a language of like, let's fucking go. Let's not fuck around. Don't worry about meditation. Don't worry about all this kind of stuff, which is true in a context if you're sat there thinking that I'm going to get in a sauna and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to make a lot of money. But if you're putting action in to make money, there's formulas. You have to be able to perform at a certain level to do that. And if you're meditating and you're using saunas and you're doing things that are increasing your vessel's ability to pour out more energy and actually attract more because you're a higher vibrating being, you're going to make more money if you can direct that energy in a correct, mature, specialized way. I don't really have a question, but now we're in a flow mode, bro. So do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. I'll take your metaphor a step further. Not only should you learn how the car works, you should learn how to drive. Because if you're an amateur driver and you give yourself a Mustang, you won't be able to do anything with it. But if you give an expert car driver a junk piece of garbage from the 1990s, they can do a lot with it. So this is why I stress being a high performance individual. It has nothing to do with being materialistic. It has everything to do with, can you play the game at a high level? Can you become competent? Can you become skilled, highly communicable? Can you be someone who can do almost anything? Now, don't not specialize. The jack of all trades is the master of none. But to some degree, balance requires that you be able to do multiple things. So not everyone needs to be a world-class fighter, but everyone should be able to defend themselves. Not everyone needs to be Gordon Ramsay, but everyone should know how to cook. Not everyone needs to be a polyglot, but everyone should be able to speak more than one language. This kind of thing, being well developed, is something that allows you to get more out of life because you can give more, you can get more, you can be a vessel for more. So I think in terms of high performance, so many people are putting stoppers on themselves and they don't even realize how or why. Going back to in the box, out of the box, there is no box. People are limitless. And I say this unironically. You can see it on my face. I believe this wholeheartedly. The only limits that human beings have are the ones that they put on themselves, the ones they have in their mind. Again, the mind itself is the cage, is the prison. So to be able to perform at your highest, to do anything you want to be able to do, it's really necessary that you start questioning why you can't do what you think you can't do. Because if you question your limiting beliefs, you can deconstruct it and turn it into something that is no longer limiting you. And you also talked about those two languages, the language of money and the language of energy in the universe. That's pretty much spot on for the Buddhist concept of the cycle of doing and being. You take action, you sit back and you exist. You take action, you sit back and you exist. Even ironically, for people that call themselves doers, who are you? This is who I am. I am a doer. So when you are being, you are in fact doing. And so reaching a point of enlightenment or becoming more enlightened is realizing that it's that never-ending cycle of do more, be more, achieve more. So that I think is really why I try to tell people that it's not about the money. Realistically, outside of the fact that financial institutions exist and you have taxes to pay and bills to pay, money doesn't matter. It's a store of value, but there are people in this world that don't have nearly as many material riches as some people do, but they live happier lives. Like Anthony Bourdain, God rest his soul, dude was rich, traveling the world, eating food, talking to people, much more cultured than the average individual, but he unfortunately took his own life. So that's why I stress to people that it's, again, going back to Fight Club, you're not your job, you're not the car you drive, you're not the money in your bank, you're not the contents of your wallet, you're not your fucking khakis, you're the what is it? All singing, all dancing crap of the world. It's really something special when people realize that you don't need to be constrained by the bullshit that society tells you is important. You don't need all these material things. You can acquire them and you can use them as tools, but it's not important. It really is who you are that matters. And people see that. People see people that aren't good, are bad people. I say, stay away from that guy. Why would you talk to him? It's not important. What's important is the people you meet, the hands you shake, and the energy you have.
We've probably done about an hour right now. So I normally go up to about an hour. Since we're on such a high power and flow, I'm going to start to close out with this and just going to keep flowing and give an example of what comes to my mind as you're talking. So just the nature of how we describe and communicate things. You say one thing because you can only say one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't equate to say that there's not value in not doing it or doing it. It's very hard to describe. But when you say there that it's not necessarily the money that's important, in the context of what we're talking about in internal power, internal energy, it's alchemy, really, turning an idea into an actual reality. Oh, I want to get a big house. And 6 months of work happened. Boom, you've alchemized a big house through work. So it's also very healthy to have kind of a targeted mindset of, I do want to aim for 10K a month. I do want to aim for these numbers. I am going to strictly focus on these things. But your internals, you said at the very start, is internalize it, right? Look inwards. Your internals have to be driven by the principles that money is not the answer, it's the result. However, you're going after money as the target as a result of your work. And combining the two is the magic formula. Really, really merging the two with anything is the magic formula for me. And I think about this as an example as we start to close out. I'm seeing emails come out every single day right now from Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate is right now sat in a Romanian prison cell in a very unjust situation, being absolutely pushed to a limit just because of the state of corruption, what we're in this dimension. However, that mental fortitude that comes from him, and although Andrew Tate has been the guy to market the purpose of being able to make money, and this is the big kick up the arse as to why I'm in this situation, even interviewing you, bro, is I realized that was the only thing I was lacking. It was like, yeah, I need the freedom that I'm talking about that's going to come through money. Let's not fuck around. Let's go and get this money. Let's get this fucking bank paid. He has made X amount of money, done what he's done, but he's done it as a result. And even if he doesn't communicate it in the marketing nature of himself, he's able to go through that cell right now and stay resilient, stay strong, keep up these very, very encouraging, inspiring emails because he has a connection to his true self. He understands the true reality of nature, but understand it's his mind. His mind will play tricks on him. His mind will want to lead him in directions. His mind will be the test, the filter that comes into him. But the only reason he's able to not be basically driven by it himself is because he's self-aware enough, which actually comes through driven through spirit. And at the core of his work, why he's changing Earth for the better. You can't say all that stuff if you're Andrew Tate because it ruins the image and the impact of what you need to do to say it. But I can, and I can let people know the same way you can, bro, is to say, look, the reality of what he's doing also comes from a spiritual awareness, a development, things that are learned through martial arts, things that are learned through putting yourself out there in the world, going to get a load of experiences and becoming more aware and more, I guess, more control over your own powers of what you can achieve. So when you're put into a cell and they're trying to fucking break you, you're unbreakable. Like I told about the story in Caves. I'm unbreakable here because I know that I'm not this reality. I'm experiencing it through this vessel, but my true self is just aware of everything. Those skills are, this is where we come full circle. Those skills happen through meditation, through a consideration towards your health and self, and understanding teachers that are really spiritual teachers, spiritual guides that give you that. You've mentioned many, many great examples of it. You mentioned some great philosophers. All of these people weren't necessarily making loads of money, but we take the wisdom from the spirit into this dimension and apply it to making money. So what I really want to convey as a message, which is super important in this episode for me, is be careful what you slander. Understand the context of stuff. Be careful what you slander, because you end up slandering your true self and you'll miss the capacity and infinite ability you have to go further than you're even thinking you can. Can't say much more than that. Bro, do you have anything you want to close with? Anything that you want to say? Anything you want to promote? Or anything you just want to convey to Earth? And let's stay on the kind of topic of people that are out here trying to make money. How can we close this episode out with a very strong, powerful message to leave in people's minds to think about?
I've got two things for you, and I think this will be a fantastic way to wrap up and keep everything connected. I really like how you mentioned Andrew Tate, and it's fantastic that we were talking about Charles Manson and Wes Watson. These are people that are all in prison, but their minds are free. I want to remind the people of Earth that the only thing keeping you caged is your mind. The first step is to uncage your mind. If you like the kind of things that I'm saying, then I highly recommend that you follow me on Twitter. My @ is @TWO_Mr. Sunshine. I think that for people that are interested in breaking programming, that want to improve, want to have a life worth living, then the first step is to look inward.
What I'll do for everyone that's listening and watching the show, as I kind of just develop like it into a more presentable form, I will always make sure I have at least a description underneath that covers all the socials of myself, the guests, and everything we're doing. I am about to, and I say about to, this is going to happen whenever kind of I'm pulled towards it. I'm going to start to read the book that Mr. Sunshine has already written. And two reasons I'm doing that. One, because every single person has a different angle and lens that helps spread your scope of understanding. And two, it's very important to pour energy into people that are doing work that is needed. And that's subjected to everyone. But bro, Mr. Sunshine, thank you for bringing your light. Thank you for your work. I look forward to exchanging much more as we go throughout just this year alone and just seeing what's going to happen for both of us. Thank you for being on the show as one of the most powerful guests so far, for sure. And as I say, everyone listening, check in the box below, get in touch. And the key thing that you can do right now, today, is engage. We talked about the mind a lot. Ment is mind. If you can engage your mind by actually just sending a DM, you are putting keys in doors that you probably never thought about to open. And there are services available. So thank you everyone for listening. Mr. Sunshine, stay bright, stay lit.
Thank you for everything.
And thank you for your power. Until the next one. Peace.